reality becomes you.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, it's February. You know what that means. It's the real season of love. The real season of love, we take a look at all your favorite romance films. And on today's episode, in this series specifically, we're taking a look at the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 2. After the birth of Renesmee, Nessie, the Cullens gather other vampire clans in order to protect the child from a false allegation that puts the family in front of the Volturi. Wow. We made it to the finale. I'm very proud of everyone that stuck through us to the end here. We got through what I think was the most utter disaster in cinema making I've ever seen in my entire life with the last film. Breaking Dawn Part 2, I had zero expectations going into it. To be honest with you, I was kind of done. I really didn't care about Bella finally becoming a fierce, hear me roar vampire girl and her beta husband, Edward, and their whatever weird, creepy looking vampire human baby story subplot. I had no interest in it, honestly, with what was going to happen forward. But little did I know, after watching this movie, I think Twilight finally understood it at the end. And I kind of can't wait to talk about that with you guys and kind of have this like little emotional experience I had with, this profound moment, if you will, with watching the series where I think Twilight finally discovered what it needed to be. Unfortunately, it's the end of the series and it's over. So, again, I can't wait to talk about with you with that. But Adam, let's start with you. What did you think?
I gotta agree. It hit the mark for me that I was not expecting it to hit whatsoever.
It was a
like
little late.
yeah, I know. There was more, comedy in it.
Right.
It didn't take itself too seriously, which is great.
Right.
The twist was fantastic because I was not expecting it whatsoever.
Right.
It was honestly an overall much more enjoyable experience than I was expecting.
Had some really cool ideas. There's just a lot of things in this that I think could have been great. And it's just a shame that it took this long to get to it for the series to finally have that engagement that it really needed to have, I think, with whatever audience it was targeting. Because I think at the end, it felt like we don't give a shit. We're just making whatever we make. And that's kind of how it is. But that's what works so great for this movie. And I think it is, honestly, next to Eclipse, I think it's probably the second most enjoyable, maybe the first. It's kind of a close tie up there, and I'm still on the fence of how I feel about it, because I actually did have a good time with this, and again, we'll talk about why. Julie, how about you? What did you think of the finale of the Twilight Saga?
Yeah, we're at the end and it finally stuck the landing. Of course, there's issues with it, 100%. But this had the highest stakes that a Twilight movie could have. Really cool action in a fun, twisty way that I remember initially watching it for the first time and being floored by. Again, they're having fun. There's a lot of cool different characters. It's Twilight World Tour, as I like to call it. Again, the least interesting part of this is like the family dynamic or the love story dynamic between Edward, Bella, and now Renesmee. Everything else is a lot more compelling or interesting. I have to say, I love, as you were reading the synopsis and you said Renesmee, Nessie, I was deep into an eye roll. And when I came out of it, I see Adam's also coming out of his deep eye roll.
Yeah.
So it's cringe.
That Nessie that's a fantastic nickname. You gotta actually, and you know what? And again, it doesn't make it any less awkward, as we said from the previous review, that, this werewolf young man is going to marry this infant once she's of age or be together or whatever his plans are of ill intent, apparently. But let's talk about why I think this one actually works. Adam, we've talked about this previously, and Julie too. We've been on the border of it's so bad it's good, right? I think we've all kind of felt like it's been teetering on the fence, right? It's kind of like swaying back and forth, trying to find out where it lands. I think they did it. I think they actually did fall onto the point where it's so bad it's good. The dialogue's atrocious, but I think they're self-aware of a lot of it in this movie. and it seems like they're a little bit more comfortable. I mean, sure, there are scenes where, like, yeah, you know, it's trying to take itself a little bit seriously, but all these, like, extra vampire characters that they're kind of accruing, kind of like Julie said, it's like Twilight World Tour, this movie. They're getting all these, like, really potentially interesting vampire characters, but they all have, like, these crazy, zany, over-the-top personalities. You even have Rami Malek, which I really don't even remember him being in this movie. When he showed up as, like, a vampire who's like the freaking Avatar from The Last Airbender, I'm like, where was this the rest of the series? How interesting would this have been if we had something like this sooner? They're all interesting characters.
Yeah, I honestly forgot that he was in it too, and it's like until I think maybe I realized it in part one more, but I forgot that so many of the vampires have like these more unique abilities, and
And
that
that's
I
a cool
wish that
thing.
we saw more of those. Like I totally forgot that Edward could, hear thoughts,
Right.
and he can hear the thoughts of Renesmee while she was inside of Bella at the time, being like, "Oh, these are my intentions."
The kid's freaking ET at this point. She's like putting her hand on people and like communicating with them,
Yes.
like
Yeah, but that's so
but
cool. Like I
it's
want to
fun,
see more.
right?
Yeah, it is
It's
fun.
fun, and I feel like the series finally found its like niche, because again, the vampire thing
Mhm.
is like, it's fine for what it is, right? I feel like it only gets you so far with what they were doing with it specifically. But once this movie decided to add this other like interesting flick of things, like where vampires have different abilities, kind of like Adam said, like how much more interesting was this overall as a movie when we were like people with different powers, whether it was like stupid like shocking people with your hand a little bit, or like you said, like Edward's reading minds, or Bella's super crazy defense shield against blocking powers. It's cool. And I know, again, maybe the reason why it's not so played up in the other movies is, again, we're talking about target audience. It's about the romance. It's about the romance, quote unquote, the love story in this movie. But this other aspect that they have here is a lot more engaging, and I think could help the other things as well by making it even more interesting, especially if you have like conflicting powers and stuff like that, what it means to be a vampire, these things that I wanted them to explore. And now, do they do that in this movie? Not really, right, Julia? Again, you kind of said it feels like the baby's born. Oh shit, she might be like the Antichrist or something, a vampire, so that this could be a really big problem. But let's go get a bunch of friends, and then the Volturi are going to get a bunch of friends, and we're going to go scrap and have a big fight about it, and whoever is left standing is the winner. That's like the plot of this movie, essentially. And that Edward's like a cuck now, apparently, because he was the alpha for so long in these movies, and then Bella finally decided to like become a vampire, and now he's like, whatever you say, honey, I love you. I love you.
Support you.
And he literally has no character throughout the rest of the movie. Like, I think he barely has like any dialogue really in this movie.
Yeah, I feel like especially this cast of, additional vampires could have been utilized in previous books and movies. Like,
So
where
much
were a couple
cooler.
of, why didn't they reach out to some of these guys during Eclipse when they were having this, fighting a whole newborn army? They could have used a couple extra hands.
And they're
So
supposed to be family too, right? Like a lot of them are like quote unquote family. But again, that's so much more interesting to have involved these other characters. If you had just sprinkled out this lore throughout the other movies, even if like some of them maybe attended the school and you didn't really know that they were vampires, or something, I don't know, anything to just to have them in there would have been so much more interesting. Like there's a bigger world out there. And that world actually be against what it's trying to do. I think the Twilight series, that world is interesting. That's there.
definitely. And again, you would like, I would watch a whole movie about Rami Malek's vampire than the rest of the whole Twilight series,
Yeah.
And then it leaves to like, you have really cool ones, and then you have some that are so surface level, like that one guy, I think his name is Alistair, where he's like, I'm standoffish. I'm going to just stay in the attic and not interact with anyone. And that at the end, he's like, you have my respect. It's like, how? You guys barely interacted, like,
he's there
so
2 seconds and he's British.
Right. But then you have some that were really cool and well executed. Or so I don't know.
I'll make this argument. So one of the big problems, and again, I think these things are all interesting. I'm not going to say that they're well done or well executed, because honestly, they're not. This has been the issue that's been with the Twilight Saga the entire time we've been watching it. A lot of it has to do with like Twilight's like, we're introducing these really interesting characters for the first 2/3 of the movie. Like, oh, there's this character, and they seem like they're going to be really big, really important, right? Like everyone kind of has like this little introduction, and it goes on for like a little bit, and we see them intermingling, and we see them like, oh, they're going to be part of the story, and somehow something's going to culminate. The problem is it just kind of doesn't happen, right? It just kind of like falls flat on its face, and pretty much essentially every character just becomes like Adam said, they become like their power. Like, hey, that's the girl that shocks people with her hands. Oh, there's Rami Malek, the guy with the weird face he's like sexually looking at everybody all the time, because I think that's just his face and what he does. He can make whirlwinds and crack the earth open. There's Renesmee. He's the father of the people, you know, like they're not more interesting than the movie gives. And they kind of hint that there is something, especially like you said, the Alistair character, who seems like he's going to be like a big character with like his like dialogue and how he's interacting with everybody. I don't even know if he's in the finale. Is he even like, he's there for like a hot second?
I don't see him doing anything. I don't even think he has a special power that we're shown.
Right.
No.
But again, he's interesting and it seems fun. And these are the elements that seem so interesting. These over-the-top characters, even the Russian vampires, which I think they were by far. I was laughing hysterically as soon as they showed up and started going, "The Soviet Russia vampire, blah 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 blah." Like, what is this movie I'm watching right now? Their costumes were over the top. They looked like something out of, like, I don't even know what they were out of. Like something out of like the Lost Boys on steroids or something. It was hilarious, and I had a good time with that, and that's what I wanted. And then we get to the finale of this movie. We get to the grand conclusion, the face-off with the Volturi, which has by far the greatest scene in all of Twilight history. Adam, I would like to share the laugh with you. That was by far the greatest thing I ever seen. The leader of the Volturi goes, "Yeah." That was by far the funniest part of this entire. I laughed for like 20 minutes after that laugh. He did. What's his? I can't remember his name.
Definitely don't remember either.
Michael Sheen. Arrow.
Yeah,
Arrow.
Yeah, he literally just lets out this laugh, and I feel like that was the first take, and that was the funniest thing I've seen. He literally understood the assignment. He went home and said, "How can I make this the most ridiculous thing in the world?" And from that point forward, his acting sold the entire finale of this movie to me. I have to tell you.
Yeah, no, I did. I let out a good chuckle too. It was pretty good because it's like so unexpected, and I was like, "Oh, this is a good like."
It was fun.
He got it.
It was like it was so like, and I like that corny kind of vampire stuff. Like I want to see it like out of an old like horror movie or something like that. Like it's kind of fun, and they're just literally not taking it seriously. And
That's
so
that's what I wanted from this was, a new age vampires versus old age vampires. Like that sounds hilarious to me.
Right, and I think another reason this kind of works too, like leading up to the finale, is I think they kind of dropped the romance subplot. Like I said, Edward's kind of a non-factor really at this point. He's kind of just Bella's slave now throughout the rest of the movie. He's just kind of there to be like, "I love you." But there's no like love story, right? The love story is not the important thing anymore. I mean, sure, it's part of the story, but it's really just protecting this baby. But see how much better the movie was when we didn't focus on this shoehorned, like forced love story. I felt like everything kind of naturally came together and was a little bit that much more interesting, I'd have to say. I think the writers had a better time with it. What do you think, Julie?
Yeah, I mean,
Go
okay.
ahead first. No.
I was just gonna say that, like I said earlier, it just feels like they didn't take themselves too seriously. They just had fun with it at that point, which is and obviously when they had fun with it, the audience has fun with it too.
And that's all it needed. That's really like the push that it needed to be enjoyable.
And I think what's most interesting, and I would have to really cross-check the source material, but I think this is the biggest deviation from the source material, which is eventually like what's the best part of this whole movie, which is that end battle sequence.
Right. So let's talk about the ending. Right. Let's talk about the ending. So, Adam, you said how you were very shocked by what happened in this movie. Did you see the ending coming with this whole huge battle scene and all of that? Did you see any of that coming? Did you think it was going to get to this point?
In terms of a battle, yeah, I kind of figured that the battle was going to happen. But what ensued during the battle, I did not expect what.
And how amazing! And we're just talking about this scene before we get to the finale, if you will, of that scene. But this scene in general, I was sold on Twilight when this scene happened. I'm like, this is what I wanted throughout the whole series, because Julie brought up a good point, and we didn't actually talk about it too much in the review. Throughout Twilight, there's really been no stakes or body counts or no casualties, no consequences. When you have a story, you need consequences for your actions when things happen. If Edward and Bella decide they want to get married and how, whatever. There should have been some kind of consequence when the werewolves came after them. Maybe it killed one of the Cullens, or maybe it killed one of the werewolves or something like that, or someone was horribly scarred from Edward. Like maybe he like scarred Jacob's face up or something. Who knows? Like you could have done anything to make it remotely have consequences and make it more interesting. We didn't get any of that. And it always felt like it's just like a clean with a bow on it, right? Like, oh, well, we're good. We're going on to the next one. Everyone's happy. See, guys, happy family, happy life. Woo, we did it. Then we get to this scene, and I'm like, oh my God, everyone's freaking dying. Heads are getting ripped off. Carlisle's head gets like ripped off, and he's like holding it in the air. I'm like, this is what I wanted. I'm feeding on this. I'm like a vampire feeding on this material. The powers are flying everywhere. The vampires, you're like, oh my God, anyone could die. Literally, people die. A bunch of the Cullens die horribly. The
Jasper dies.
Yeah, the Volturi are dying. It's crazy, and it's what I wanted to see. Adam, this was it. This was like peak cinema for Twilight right here, this scene.
It's just so crazy to think about, the first movie being how tame, I guess, in terms of
series,
violence.
I would argue being tame, really. Besides Eclipse, maybe was the only one where there was a little bit more of something going on,
but it's just crazy because like having the love story being the main focus of really books. Or the movies 1 through 4 there, and then you come to the 5th one, and here is the crescendo of the entire series is this giant epic battle here.
Right, and then like even like the scenes with the wolves, like the younger wolf who died, I think that's Sam, dies, and then you hear like his sister howling, and Jacob's got Nessie on his back, and he's running away, and it's just like he like looks back, and he's got like tears in his eyes, and like, oh shit, where was this throughout the whole? This CGI wolf has better acting than the rest of the goddamn cast in this movie. It finally hit home. We had consequences, goddamn it, for everything that led up to this. I felt so happy at this point. I know that's terrible, but people dying, things happening, I felt like, goddamn it, this was awesome. This felt my time that I felt like I wasted in all of these movies up until this point. It felt like it was justified for me just to get to this point and to have this moment. Then something happens. Julie, would you like to take the lead on what happens?
So everybody's dying. Aro, the leader of the Volturi, dies. And then it pans out and you see Alice gripping his hand. And she goes, that's what's going to happen if you proceed forward with your plan. You're going to die. Everybody's going to die. So unless you change your course. He's like, oh, shit. Bye, guys. My bad. I'll leave you alone.
Let's go home.
Well, almost. He's like, my bad. And some of the other Volturi are like, wait. No, we came here for a reason. And then Alice plays her official trump card. She goes, look at this guy over here. He's also half human, half vampire.
And nobody knew about him. Out of nowhere, by the way.
Yeah.
No introduction, just some guy walking out of the woods like, hey, I'm half man, half vampire. I've been around a long time.
100 and something years.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. The Volturi are like, all right, guys, let's take our ball. We're going to go home. It's been fun. Yeah. Adam, how about you? What'd you think of that?
I mean, Alice was my favorite character, so I wasn't totally upset about, her kind of saving the day.
But it's shocking. It's super shocking. And for another reason besides this whole death, like it's shocking that they decided to do such a twist, right?
Well, you'd have to think if they didn't do this movie would have been so boring.
Right.
Nothing would have happened.
Right. So what do you guys think? So we'll start with Adam. What do you think overall of this twist? Do you think it's well executed? What do you think? Because again, and when you ask a lot of Twilight fans, there's a lot of diverse opinions on this, and a lot of people always say the same thing. They love all the movie's actually okay, and then they get this awesome action scene, and then they just undo it, and it's just status quo right to the end again. What do you think?
Do I like that it added enough variety in the movies? I don't know. It's kind of disappointing that there really still weren't any stakes in the entire series. It is just kind of very upsetting.
Right.
I don't know. I like I said, I did enjoy it though, but I don't know. It's tough.
Okay. All right, so then go with that. Then Julie, how about you? What did you think?
Again, I liked it because it provided action that would have been just completely, there would have been nothing in it at all. But again, yeah, it goes back to that bigger thing where everybody pretty much walked away scot-free. There was no consequences. I think that one girl who, I mean, I guess rightfully so, because she started all this drama. She got
tailed on everybody, and she got murdered for tattletaling.
Snitches get stitches, or snitches get their body, arms and legs ripped off and set on fire.
Literally.
Right. So like, you don't care that she died. So there's no consequences. Everybody gets a happy ending.
Except
And
that
then
one cousin. Everybody's got that one cousin that doesn't get a happy ending. It's terrible. But so my take is this, which I don't know how you guys are going to feel about my take. So at first I despised everything because, again, it gave me everything that I wanted, right? And I've said this before. This was what I was waiting for. This is kind of the culmination that justified it. And then they pull back and reveal that none of it ever happened. And I had flashbacks to like one of the popular Harry Potter theories that was out there. It was like, it was all a dream. Like the ending of the last book was going to be, and then he woke up, was like the final page, and the boy woke up under the stairs or whatever like that. And he just dreamed everything happened. And sure, you could equate that here a little bit to some of that being said, but thematically, kind of like Adam said, it gave me what I wanted as far as action. It satisfied that flavor, and it was horrific, it was violent, and it was horrible. And it kind of needed to be in order for me to be convinced that Alice giving this vision to the head of the vampires, like this is what's going to happen, and him believing so deeply in her power. You know what? As far as what the movie and the story it was trying to tell, kind of made sense, and I really kind of can't argue too much with it. I think honestly, I applaud them for giving us the action scene, and then I kind of also applaud them for taking a huge risk by saying, "Nah, we're just fucking with you. This is really how the movie's gonna end." I kind of give it a little bit of credit with that, and I think, in all honesty, how this ties together, it kind of ties with the whole series, like not giving two shits at the end here and having just a good time with it, saying, this is what you guys wanted. No, that's not what Twilight is. No, we're not going that way. We have a happy ending we have to tell. And you know what? It's fine at the end of the day. At least I got the action scene. I know it exists. It does have a reason to exist beyond like just being like a little bit of a cock tease and saying like, hey, this is what you could have had. But this movie, I think it executes it well enough. And I do think it's actually relatively interesting. But overall, you guys, so we get to the finale. It kind of just wraps up neatly. Final thoughts, Adam, on this series? It kind of just wraps up kind of boring after that. Everyone lives happily ever after at that point.
Yeah, I have no desire to watch the movies again.
No, I'm done for a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do another review, maybe 10 years from now, maybe I'll do it again. Maybe.
Reflect 10 years from now.
Maybe. Big maybe, though. Besides that, though, I don't know. There's a couple scenes that maybe I would rewatch on YouTube, but I'm not going to go rewatch the entire series again at some point.
Yeah, I think Twilight, it has an interesting place in history, I think we can all say, right? I think it was a tween phenomenon, if you will, of this vampire love story that sparked 1,000 TV shows, a YA section at the local Barnes & Noble. Everyone it sparked this generation of storytelling with these darker characters. And unfortunately, we kind of moved out of that. I guess the supernatural characters kind of left the back pedal, and we kind of transitioned into the next thing, which I think probably was like zombies was after that. And then we transitioned now into superheroes, and superheroes they're kind of finding their like sunsetting, quote unquote, a little bit now at this point too. So there's always going to be a new thing that'll step into the zeitgeist of culture and whatnot. But I think Twilight, it does have a reason to exist. It created a lot of funny memes, a lot of funny jokes and references that we make even till now. Well, I won't say I loved my time with Twilight, but I think I understand the appeal maybe a little bit more than I did before we watched it. Julie, any final thoughts on the Twilight series as a whole before we score?
It's like a little time capsule,
Yeah.
Just kind of sums up the 2010s. It happened, we were there for the ride. It has its ups and it has a lot of downs. But, I feel like everyone needs to say that they've experienced Twilight at least one point in their life.
Yeah, I mean,
better or worse.
yeah, for better or worse, I guess. And if not, we got to see the start of some two amazing actors that have a career. Fortunately, not you, Taylor Lautner. You're kind of done as far as your career, unless you resurge down in your like 40s or 50s or something, and you show up again. But I think Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. It's nice to see two actors whose careers were not ruined because of these movies, because they could have very well have been if you look at it that way. They could have been typecasted, but they went against the grain and they picked these radically different roles. And we see Robert Pattinson in A Lighthouse doing things with a mermaid, and Kristen Stewart doing God knows what with God knows different things in other movies. And again, it's incredibly interesting to see the direction they went and how they kind of flourished as an actor and an actress. Everyone else, again, they kind of just kept the pace. If you were popular at that point, you kind of just kept on going. If you weren't, you went back to your B movies and Lifetime TV specials that you were on prior to that. But the two actors we got out of this, I'm glad to see where they came from and how they were able to evolve beyond that. It just goes to show you never kind of know what happens in Hollywood. But I'm stalling. I think it's time to wrap this up. Well, guys, let's put a big number on this one. I'm going to give the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 a 6 out of 10.
Jacob, put your clothes on.
Now, this may seem strange, really strange, but stranger things happen every day. Trust me.
Contemplating an Eclipse was my favorite, but I think Twilight Saga Part 2 here is a little bit better than that movie. I just had that much more of a time. We have the iconic laugh that I will cherish that moment forever in my entire existence, and maybe a ringtone at some point on my phone because of how hilarious it was. I just really did enjoy some of the aspects of this movie. If the Twilight Saga had maybe done something like this or filtered this from the beginning and had such a good time, I think we'd be having a different conversation of it. I think actually Twilight would have a much longer lasting staying power than it actually did maybe within the cultural space. It finally feels like they understood the assignment. Some of the actors said, screw it, let's just go have a good time. Let's make a movie with a creepy, horrible child that we didn't even talk about, which was a doll at some point. And she was so horrible during the test screenings, they had to actually CGI over her because of how disturbing it was, and people couldn't handle it. That's the kind of stuff I like to hear about. Twilight, in its beginnings, it had very humble beginnings, being this almost like low budget, weird vampire tween drama, ended with this like corny Twilight road trip movie gathering vampires fighting on a big sphere to ultimately nothing happening and everyone having a happy end. It's such a weird, wild ride. I think you do have to watch it, kind of like Julie said, just to experience it, because those highs and lows, man, when they happen, they really do happen, and it's kind of an interesting car wreck to watch. Adam, what do you think on this one?
I'm going to give Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 a 6.5 out of 10.
So should I start calling you Dad?
I enjoyed it that much more. Like I said, Alice, being my favorite character out of the entire series, coming in clutch. And there were some very enjoyable moments. I really enjoyed Bella freaking out at the beginning after Jacob, calls Renesmee Nessie.
How funny is that?
Yeah, I enjoyed that scene. It was a good
Smacked him around a
little
little
bit there. Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny.
And then
But
you have
I
Edward,
mean,
and then but that's like the we're talking about. Then Edward's in the background, like, oh baby, that's hot. You're smacking around a werewolf. I ain't helping.
yeah, it's just, those parts just made it that much more entertaining for me, and that's why I think it's deserving of a 6.5 at least.
Yeah, I can understand. I think you're justified 100% in that for sure. Julie, last one. What's your final word on Twilight here?
I'm going to be giving the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 a 6.5 out of 10 as well.
From the beginning, it was Nessie who wanted me there.
Nessie? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster?
This is the best movie in the series. Like I said, I think I'm like a point off between that and Eclipse. Just at that climax alone of the battle that doesn't happen was the biggest selling point for me. I do like seeing the other vampires that we get. I would have liked more of them. So it was a nice conclusion to this franchise, because this movie itself had ups and downs. The whole franchise had ups and downs. So it was a little bit of a cherry on top.
Yeah, I could agree. Again, I can't stress it enough. I think Twilight does have a place in movie history, whether it's like the darkest lurches of it. You kind of got to dig through the crap to get to it. But there's a reason it exists, and there's a reason it's popular. And, you know, Twilight was a thing. And like Julie also said, too, it's a time capsule, right? It's a weird time in society when we really love this romance between a weird, shy human girl, a vampire, and a werewolf. That was something. It's surprising that was a thing for as long as it was. And it's fun to go back and watch. But most importantly, we've been talking ad nauseum about Twilight. What I want to know is in the comments below, what do you guys think? Was this the best movie in the series? What is your favorite movie in the series? Even if you want, rank them in the comments below. I want to know what you guys think from beginning to end. What were your favorite Twilight movies? I know it probably ranges. There's a bunch you could make a defense for as far as being the best, for being the worst. Probably easier to rank the worst, I think, than the best if I had to pick. But you can just like flip-flop the order and it's the same thing. But yeah, you know, I'm curious. I want to know what you guys think. Did we get it right? Did you enjoy this series? What other series would you like us to review going forward? We're leaving the real season of Love. I know you all are really depressed about it, but you know, what are we covering next on the channel? What do you want to hear us talk about and give our insights in? Because again, we love to talk about everything here. We don't discriminate: vampire, werewolf, human, whatever you want to review. You know, we'll talk about it. That's how we are. We're pretty flexible here. But let me tell you guys know we are on all your favorite podcasting networks. Make sure you check us out there. Here on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. My name is Kevin. That's Adam and Julie. We are your real movie guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you in the next one.